want you guys to understand something very clearly here. I was born with a congenital, near-fatal disease where if I ever managed to shut the up for more than like 5 seconds, my heart might actually stop. I am a D1 first draft pick king of yapping, especially when it comes to stuff like Counter-Strike. And for the most part, since 2014, when I first really started paying attention to Pro Counter-Strike, I consider myself very lucky to have watched pretty much all of the most relevant matches and tournaments between then and now. And out of all of that esteemed history, all of those great maps played throughout the years, I'm not lying, this finals today between G2 and Vitality is one of the best of threes I've gotten to watch live in a very long time, and truly, and by far the most entertaining pro match the CS2 has had in its short history thus far. It was a sloppy, beautiful mess of a 3-map series where G2 and Vitality really went to the wire on every single map, every single round, lead changes, clutches, huge plays, huge mistakes, big shifts in momentum all throughout it, overtimes, multiple overtimes. All the while backed by an ebb and flow of one of the most insane crowds we've had at a CS event in a very long time. Like, obviously, I want you to watch this video, watch it all the way through because it helps out immensely in YouTube algorithm. But also, if you did not catch this match live, you need to stop what you're doing now and go watch it first and then come back. Because getting to experience it as spoiler-free as possible is an enjoyable experience that I would not want to deprive you of. Overall, I'm just stunned at what we just saw play out. And on the other side of it, G2 have triumphed over Vitality to capture their first tournament win in the CS2 era. And today, we're going to be going over it in its entirety. So make sure you guys sit down, relax, and before we get started, make sure you take a second, leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because it helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm. Many of you who watch these videos are non-fact subscribed, so make sure you take a second and do it. While you're down there, consider becoming a channel member for $5 a month to support me directly in what we do here, get access to exclusive emblems, emotes, normal uploads the night before everyone else gets them, as well as a shout out at the end of every video. And lastly, check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/LionHeartZ1337. I stream Sunday through Friday, 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be live later tonight talking about this incredible series while we chill and play some Counter-Strike, and let's get into the craziness that played out before us. So we got things started today on Inferno, and I literally have so much to say about this map that's a bit overwhelming. I would say overall, this single map of Inferno is the best individual map that we've seen played in CS2 by far. This had a little bit of everything. It had huge lead changes, it had huge clutches, all of the star players overperformed expectations, we had multiple overtimes, some of the best, like, tensest moments that I've seen in a pro Counter-Strike match in a very long time, and it was just so thoroughly entertaining, and that's all despite the fact that this version of Inferno has so many flaws. But these teams were so uniquely equipped to handle each other that it delivered entertaining moment after entertaining moment. So much so that I can't go over all of it. I'm just going to focus on the stuff that's like the most relevant in my mind and in my notes. But this really was a map that you could break down for like over an hour if you really wanted to. This ended up being a 19-16 double overtime victory for G2, and right at the gate, I want to talk a little bit about G2 on Inferno. I made a joke about this in yesterday's recap, but I think challenging G2 on Inferno at this point is a bit of a fool's gambit. In the last month, they've played Inferno something like 12 or 13 times, and they're at an almost 90% win rate on it. I think G2 are very comfortable on this version of Inferno, and the way they navigate both their CT and T sides is some of the best in the game right now. I think that shows here, because even when Vitality would take huge chunks out of them, their ability to recover and innovate, especially on the T side down the stretch, was really something to be seen. I think Nico's mid-game calling was excellent throughout this entire game, and was definitely one of the things that kept them so involved, especially when Vitality got control late, and it looked like they were going to sweep this map right out from underneath their feet. In terms of individual performances, on both sides we got exactly what we wanted here. m0NESY and ZywOo were having incredible maps. Both of them were electric, ZywOo with 35 kills, m0NESY with 32 kills, both of them above a 1.5 rating and almost 100 ADR between the two. And then the supporting pieces for both teams really showed up. Nico continued to have godlike form in this tournament, and usually what was holding G2 back earlier in the tournament was Hunter and Nexa going missing, but both of them had great maps here on Inferno, as well as at various points throughout this series. Hunter was the second best player for G2 with 28 kills at 1.23 rating. On the other side, once again, Vitality got exactly what they wanted here. They got great games out of mezii and Flames. Really, the thing that sticks out to me in terms of what went wrong for Vitality is, well, despite Spinks having great impact and great numbers, some of his decision making, especially down the stretch, looked absolutely terrible. Moments where he looked lost, completely out of control on areas of the map where he shouldn't be, getting caught in the open, traded for no reason, bad decision making, bad pushes. He had good impact in terms of his numbers, but when you look at the playmaking, it just wasn't there, and he needs to be so much better for Vitality to win. It can't just be ZywOo and Messi. When it comes down to individual moments, there were great rounds throughout this map, really too many to count, but I think a great microcosm of how this game went is to look at the overtime. We opened up overtime, and Vitality very confidently, very strongly win all 3 of their T rounds to force match point. And at this point, we're swapping to the T side for G2. Inferno, a traditionally CT-sided map. You're thinking, okay, there's no way. Vitality only have to win 1 defense round out of 3 to close it out and send it to a map 2. But then, as if they were really just ordained to win this series, as if the CS gods were with them all the way, G2 calls 5 straight of some of the best T-side rounds on Inferno I've seen in a while. Not only were they better in terms of their individual moments and fragging and clutching, but some of these mid-round calls, the strats they called around Vitality, were insane. After successfully blowing up the B site twice in a row, off the backs of huge clutch wins by players like Bubblesj, we open up the last round of overtime, and Nico, after conditioning Vitality so much that they're either pushing B or they're going to split boiler onto A, they do a slow creep up mid, no smokes, no utility, no flashes, they creep arches, and Vitality are never looking for this. They're focused so much on having the 3B defense to hold off the B rush that they're not even concerned about players coming through mid or arches. The other players on Vitality are worried about holding the A site towards apartments, so Nico is allowed just to creep all the way around the library by himself and just execute a perfect A pinch. And as soon as Nico manages to execute Spinks with that great one-tap, it feels like G2 were just destined to win this round. And when you consider that G2 were down 11-8, they turn around, manage to force OT. They get swept the first half of overtime. Now they're back against the wall, match point every single time. They go on the miracle run to reverse sweep the first overtime, move it to a second. They win the first 2 rounds, again, a 5-round stretch that looked like Vitality were going to be broken in half. And then Vitality pull out a final CT round win, where suddenly even the crowd gets quiet. Did Vitality just break G2's momentum? We get a long tech pause like right after. G2 switches back to the CT side, immediately wins 2 back-to-back clutches, defuses to close out the map and take the 1-0 series lead. Dude, this is just so good. This is just peak Counter-Strike. It was so fun, so hectic. My heart was racing down the stretch because everything was just so tense, so exciting. Just the littlest details made the difference between rounds won and rounds lost. What an incredible opener to the series, and the question that everyone asked at that point was, were we going to maintain this on Anubis? Because Anubis is traditionally a map that G2 aren't that strong on, and a map that plays very well into Vitality's playstyle as well. And initially I thought, okay, maybe we're going to get a competitive map out of this because we open up the first half, it's 5-7. Vitality look a bit more comfortable on their CT side. The T side strats from G2 just didn't look that good to me. And importantly for Vitality, Flames, Mezzi, and ZywOo were having a field day on the CT side. And then we swap, and Vitality gets on their T side where they're much more comfortable, they're much more open. And they open up by winning the pistol round and rolling off 5 straight rounds. They force a 12-5 match point early on. You think, okay, 12-5 lead, there's no way Vitality's going to choke that. We're going to a map 3. You know, G2, they're going to win a couple like kind of gimme rounds where they're going to break Vitality's economy. But as soon as Vitality saves one, gets a good full buy, this map's going to be over, right? Right? No. G2, again, the Counter-Strike gods lifting them up by their wings into heaven itself, run off 7 straight incredible CT rounds, shutting down Vitality entirely, and not just shutting them down, kicking the door in their face and making them look silly. Just clutch, A-holds, pushes through smokes, timely map control, shutting down anti-ecos. It didn't matter. G2 could literally do no wrong on their way to forcing yet another overtime. And then we pull up to the overtime and Vitality wakes up. ZywOo is going god mode on the T side, and Vitality cleanly sweeps the overtime, winning 4 out of the 6 rounds, and suddenly we're a tied series. We're going to Nuke, the Great Decider, a map that both of these teams play really well, and thus far these teams are bringing out the very best in each other. I mean, again, on Anubis, a map that G2 really aren't even that good on usually. Bubblesj, Nico, 26 kills, 27 respectively. Stewie2K was 17, by far one of his best maps as a stand-in. But the things that went wrong for G2 are normally what tend to hold them back. Nexa and Hunter missing, though they had great clutch rounds on that CT half, admittedly. But with ZywOo and Bubblesj playing at such a fever pitch, Nuke looked like it was going to be a wonderland of a final map. We thought we were going to get a great third map where they were going to duke it out again. Was it going to even go to maybe another overtime potentially? And we open on the first half, and we're getting glimpses of that. G2 win the pistol round in the first 3, but as soon as Vitality get control of their economy, they run off 6 straight C-Team rounds, looking calmly in control, and then G2 miraculously win the final 3 to keep it to an even 6-6 half out of nowhere, when it looks like their T-side could get nothing going. Their outside control was miserable, their inside takes were bad, and Vitality were cooking on all cylinders to close out that CT half, but G2, they brought it back. Some great timely clutches, including an incredible round between m0NESY and ZywOo, where it's going to come down to a 1v1 between the two of them. ZywOo's coming through the hut with the op out. m0NESY has a molly out, trying to molly off Heaven, gets spooked by ZywOo, and ZywOo misses a shot, a critical shot that he normally hits, but he's not having a good map to open up nuke. He misses it. m0NESY scurries down the vents, gets to the lower side, gets the plant off, and posts up in dark. 4 bullets left in the AK, jiggle peeks ZywOo, and then just bangs his head off with the 4 bullets to win the clutch. And that clutch from m0NESY is the point of no return. G2 don't even look back. They run off a streak of 8 straight rounds following that clutch into the second half, and Vitality look broken. They look absolutely lost. ZywOo was having his worst map of the tournament in an elimination game, the final map of the grand finals. He only ended with 9 kills. ZywOo, who had one of his best tournaments to date, looking so dominant against all of his opponents, looking dominant in this series in the first 2 maps, and he goes missing in the biggest moments. Meanwhile, m0NESY, arguably the best player in the world, reaches new heights on Nuke to close it out. 25 kills, 1.86 rating, powering his team through to a miracle championship win with a stand-in. And the story of this tournament, as great as m0NESY was, it was the team effort by G2 that really brought it home. Nico controlling the outside on the CT side, one of the best outside players of all time. Hunter holding it together on the T side, huge impact when they needed it. Stewie anchoring on the A side, getting huge kills when he needed it. The back half of this game was played absolutely perfectly by G2. Meanwhile, Vitality, they fell apart. Down the stretch on the T side, Apex had to put the team on his back, blow up in the A side by himself just to help motivate his team to get around on the board. And even though Spinks, m0NESY, they got their numbers when they needed it, it was ZywOo going missing that was the difference between them lifting the trophy and going home. 9 kills, 0.60 rating is absolutely unacceptable by a player that many consider to be the second best talent Counter-Strike has ever produced. ZywOo is just one of those guys, man. He just seems to go missing sometimes, and when he goes missing, it's so bad. He looked so checked out in this final map, like just staring into space, already ready to go home. As soon as he loses that clutch against m0NESY, you could just see it in his eyes. He just stopped focusing. He stopped being locked in. He lost that killer instinct. And that's the difference between players like him and players like Simple, players like m0NESY. They seem to get better the more angry they get sometimes. m0NESY was frustrated at various points throughout the series, but he still kept in, still kept engaged, still kept swinging, kept taking the next shot no matter what. And look at the difference in the results. m0NESY powers his team through even some of the hardest moments and is the MVP of this match, the MVP of this tournament, and arguably the best player in the world right now. Now, there's certainly a lot to talk about in the context of what this tournament means for like the world scene going forward. You know, are MAU's going to slip up? Are FaZe looking at the point where they might need to consider a roster move? What does this mean for Vitality coming out of this after making 2 grand finals in a row and disappointing in both of them? And then you look at G2, this was a miracle run, and in the context of what comes after, I don't even want to think about it. I want to focus on just in the moment. This is one of those special tournaments that happens every once in a while, where it's the perfect set of circumstances, because G2 coming into this had no expectations. They open up the group stage playing poorly, and then they pull up into a best of 3 against the current #1 team in MAU's, a team that surely should have beat them on every single day other than the one they pulled up to. And once G2 gets that win over MAU's, it felt like just something elevated them to a whole other level. This is the best I've seen Nico play in years. m0NESY reached new heights of superiority, really established himself as a true #1 player in the world. And the calling was solid. Could this be the future that Nico moves to in-game leader? I don't know. I don't even want to think about what's next for G2 after this, because obviously Stewie was just there for one tournament. And when we look at the context of this tournament, G2 were bolstered by a home crowd that adopted them as the great American hope. And you could hear it during the match. Everyone in that stadium was on G2's side. Every time they got a kill, huge cheers. Every time Vitality failed, huge cheers would go for G2 again. The crowd chanting "F you Apex" the entire time was an incredible thing to witness. But you look at these results and you're like, surely this isn't repeatable. This is a flash in the pan. But sometimes that's okay, because we can speculate in the future another time. For right now, this will go down as one of the miracle tournament runs in the history of Counter-Strike. This is one of those finals that people are going to talk about for years to come. And when historians come back and they look for great moments early on in CS2's lifespan, this is going to be the first thing that comes up as a major blip on the radar. I've watched every single major CS2 tournament going back to IEM Sydney, which was the first major event that CS2 held. I've pretty much seen all of those grand finals since then, and not even Navi winning the major or Donk ascending to new heights at Katowice compares to this. This was such a thoroughly entertaining finals that it's hard to quantify because we got the best of everything from both teams. It was a true shootout of epic proportions that resulted in some of the best Counter-Strike I've seen in years. So at the end of it, I'm just happy to say that G2 came out on their side of it, that we got to see this Cinderella run live, because those are the special moments in sports that you don't get to see that often. These are things that are going to stay with us for years to come, like watching the Mavericks in 2011 ascend over the Miami Heat and win the finals, Dirk getting his final MVP so late in his career. You know, these moments that are so special because they are one-offs. And that's what I'm going to think about when I think about G2 winning this tournament. Not about the future, not about what's next for this lineup, what it means for ZywOo not being able to perform. I'm going to think about the fact that this was a team that shouldn't have come together. That Stewie, who hadn't played professional Counter-Strike at the Tier 1 level in over 2 years, who hasn't lifted a trophy since the Boston fucking Major, comes out of retirement, steps in on home soil, and helps to be the glue that elevates G2 to their first CS2 tournament win, and their first tournament win in almost a year. That is just so special. And that's what I want to end on. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back soon with more videos. Shout out to my channel members, Justin, Jesse, Furley, Bubblesj. Thank you guys so much for keeping the lights on. If you want to become a channel member, look in the description down below. Other than that, my name is LionHeartZ. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you soon with another video.